no one can tell you what motherhood is going to be like. They will tell you about their experience and so what to expect. However, whatever you expect, it will probably be very, very different from the reality you end up living. Instead, have no expectation. Just know that life will be very different and be ready to deal with whatever comes your way. Intrigued? Then sit back, relax, and listen to find out. On this episode, I am joined by Erin Buck, whose experience of motherhood has left her clinging on and she is not ready to let go yet. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. My guest today is Erin Buck. Thank you for joining me today, Erin.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. So, the big question, Erin, who is Erin Buck?
This is a hard question. You know, who am I? So I am a 48-year-old in 2 weeks' time, originally from the Northeast. I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I'm a person in education, TA. I am an ex-doggy daycare owner. I'm disabled. I now run a virtual assistant business that helps other freelancers and creatives. I'm a piano player. I am an imaginative soul and a stress head. I'm actually just thinking about it on my Facebook, on my personal Facebook. I think my description is I am a wife, a mother, and a stress head. That's me. I should have just gone with that.
You are lots of things. And I think being mum, maybe being women, I think we generally are lots of things. I think it's just a female trait, I'm going to say.
I believe, yeah, women, we all multitask. We multitask in day-to-day life, and we multitask about who we are. And, you know, we have to take on so many different personas and I'm not picking on men. I love men. I'm married to one. But I find that, you know, with the way that we are friends to our friends, I've always said I always need a female friend in my life. My husband is brilliant, but there's some things he just can't understand that another female can. And so, you know, you've got different kinds of friendship hats you've got to have, you know, and society gives us things that we have to, you know, maybe we shouldn't listen to, but we are labeled. And so we have to live up to that kind of thing. Then plus our own pressures of what we have to live up to. So yeah, we are many things.
We are many, many, many things. So, and we did have a very brief conversation about this, and I just can't wait to hear your answer. I sort of know what it is. Did you always know that you wanted to be a mum?
Yes, I did. I always wanted to be a mum. I've got a few I remember at 16. So I am the youngest of four going back. So I'm the youngest of four. My eldest brother is 10 years older than me. Then my other brother's 7, and then my sister is 5 years. So when I was 14, up in the Northeast, you tend to have kids younger than I now live in the Northwest. And obviously, I've been to university, and well, not obviously, but I have been to university, and my friends have had their children older. So when my brother was 24 and I was 14, he had his first child. And I was just in awe of her. And I used to walk around saying that she was my daughter. And I used to babysit her. So my sister-in-law used to work. And so during the summer holidays, it would be me and Amy. You know, I taught her I taught her how to sing We Will Rock You by Queen. And Winnie Pooh is a running joke that we still tell her now. She's 30 odd now. And that was when I sort of thought, you know, I just love it. I just love this little thing of love that I just love so much. That moment on, it was like, oh, yeah, I just want to have kids. So I met my husband when I was 16, and bless him, he wasn't scared off. But at 16, I was like saying, can we have children? Can we have a kid? And he was like, no, not a chance. So I wasn't allowed to have one when I wanted one. I wanted to be a young mum. I wanted to be like the mums that you saw on American telly that hung around with their kids Just a caveat there, it doesn't work out like that. Um, and so I went to university and I did pediatric nursing because I wanted to be with children. And I found it very stressful. And I eventually dropped out. I was 2.5 years in to this course. I had 6 months to go. And I realized that I wanted to be with children, but I couldn't, I didn't want to be with sick children. I couldn't cope emotionally with what I was having to deal with. So I decided to drop out and I rang my dad. And I was 21. And obviously, he'd been paying for the last 3 years. I had to explain to my dad what I was going to do. And he turned around and said, "Doesn't surprise me." He said, "You will not be happy until you have children." And he was right. I wasn't. I just I really wanted children. So I left university and I've done jobs as my kids have grown up, and I've now got my own business and everything, which I found that after my kids had grown up, but I didn't feel complete until I had my children. That's all I wanted. But yeah, as we move on with the story, it didn't turn out as how I thought it was going to be.
So that is an amazing segue into the next part, because obviously your life, it's not that it's been complicated, but it has been different. So tell us about your mum journey.
So I so we lived in just after we got married. So I got married in the May, and found out that I'd miscarried without even realizing I was pregnant, and I was devastated because that's all I wanted, and then it wasn't. And then I decided that I was not going to try anymore for a while, even though the doctor told me to just get back on the horse. Literally, it was like, no, no, thanks. I'll have a bit of a break. But then we moved to America in the November. So when we moved to America in November, I was feeling a bit stronger. So I said to my husband, right, can we start trying? Now at the time I smoked, and but I was just trying. I was going to give up, but I was trying. So I still smoked, and I just wasn't getting pregnant. But I was very impatient, so I decided to buy a book that would tell me how to get pregnant. And so like I said, this is only about we only got out there in the November. It wasn't even a year since I'd lost the baby. It was about the January, February time I'd ordered this book. And we came back to England on holiday, and it was the April, and I'd said to Richard, I really, really want to get pregnant. And he said, okay, I will do dates, times, positions, heats, whatever you want to do, but you have to give up smoking. And I threw a packet of cigarettes in the bin and I didn't smoke again for a long time. And we went back out to America. The book had arrived. And then like 5 days later, I was just sat on the balcony bit and I just thought, I hadn't even read the book. I hadn't even done any of that. And I just felt different. And I didn't know what it was. Richard and his sister and my brother-in-law were visiting had gone to the supermarket. Now I had a stash of pregnancy tests because every month I wanted to be pregnant. And I just felt just not right. So I took the last pregnancy test that was in the drawer, and I was pregnant. I hadn't even I must have been pregnant before I'd done cigarettes in the thing. I'd been pregnant at that time and not realized it. So I sat there waiting. Now we didn't drive at the time, so they'd walked to the supermarket. And when he came back, I can remember letting his sister in and me coming out onto the hallway and just bursting out crying and showing him thinking, oh my God, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant. And he was dead excited. And then I said, but what if it's wrong? What if it's wrong? What if it's a false test? It's been there for a while. So he had to walk all the way back to the supermarket to buy a stash of pregnancy tests, which I did loads of. And it was really cool because because I was living in America, I had no family. So my sister-in-law was there at the time I found out I was pregnant. So I booked a doctor's appointment, and I had a family member with me. Then she went back to America, and then I had my whole pregnancy without family, on my own with friends, but in America. And my American friends were brilliant. They really took me under their wing, and they should. And it's completely different having a baby in America, which is what I ended up doing. And I had Luke, and he made me really ill. So I was a big girl. So what I didn't realize, I tell you, this is my story is going to be really complicated. Before I got pregnant, every time I went out for food, I would puke. I would be sick. And I didn't know why. I just put it down to, you know, I didn't know. Then when I was pregnant with Luke, I was near the end getting sicker and sicker. And I never gained any weight the whole of my pregnancy. He literally just absorbed everything that was there. I lost about 4 or 5 stone just from giving birth. It was brilliant. My face had really thinned down. I'd eaten cheeseburgers and all the things I shouldn't have been eating, and I lost weight when I gave birth. So thank you to Luke for doing that to me. I felt like I was thin for once. But on the day that I was going for a checkup, he wasn't due for 2 weeks. And I said, right, I'm taking my bag. And Richard's going, it's not going to happen today. I said, they're going to induce me. I'm going to tell them I have had enough being sick. And the nurse was scanning me and she was like, oh, yeah, everything's fine. And I said, please tell me you're going to induce me. And she said, why are you so desperate to be induced? I said, I'm sick of being sick all the time. And so she rolled me on my side and she scanned my gallbladder. And she said, oh my God, your gallbladder is packed with gallstone. That's why you've been sick all this time. So I must have had it before I got pregnant. But as he grew, he compacted the gallbladder, which was making me iller and iller. So then the doctor came back in and said, right, well, when he's about 6 months, I'm going to put you forward. You're going to need to have your gallbladder removed. It's like, okay. He said, but I just want to put you, just go sit outside and I just want to put some monitors on you. Spend half an hour there and then you can go home. Right, okay then. So I'm sat there and the nurse comes and she's looking at it and she says, all right, I'll be right back. And then she comes back a bit later and she says, you all right? I said, yeah, fine, bored, but she said, come back into the room. The obstetrician wants to see you. So I went back in and he did an internal and then turned around and said, congratulations, you're 4 centimeters. Walk across the road, you're going to hospital. And I said, what? I'm in labor. And he said, yeah, but I wasn't feeling anything. I was not feeling any contraction. So I went to hospital, which private room, decorated like a hotel, nurses in. It just didn't feel like a hospital. They brought a little bed for Richard, bless him. He was doing all the hard work. He had somewhere to sleep. But because he didn't believe I was going to have the baby, and I was convinced I was, he had to drive all the way back home again to sort out the guinea pig. And he kept ringing, going, nothing's happening yet. I'm on my way. Nothing's happening yet. Okay, I'm on my way. And I sat there and I played chess and and they kept coming in going, are you sure you're not feeling this? It's like, nope, not feeling a thing. And they said, right, well, we're going to break your waters. Is that all right? And I said, yeah, fine. Broke my waters. Before they even left the room, it was like, oh my God, what the hell is that? And the pain just came. It was like my waters had protected me from the contractions. Well, then it was all go. So I have the pride joy of at 10:30 on the morning of his birthday, I have an ultrasound picture of him. And at 10:30 on the night of his birthday, I have a picture of me holding him. So in 12 hours, there was no pain. And then when they brought that, I had pain. They had an on-call epidural woman came in and gave me an epidural when the pain was so bad. I think it was like 5 pushes and he was out. So it was really easy. And I wanted to hold him and I wanted to have skin to skin. Richard fell asleep like he'd had a hard day at work. I'm laying awake all night, just staring at him, just thinking, oh my God, I finally got what I really, really want. Next day, went home. I had nobody to ask, was this right? And obviously, because of the time difference, and I never believed people when I rang people in my family that had like my 3-year-old nephew that they couldn't remember. Obviously, I now have experienced this that I cannot remember. But I was like, well, is this right? Oh, I don't remember. That was 3 years ago. Why can't you remember? It's only 3 years. Is it correct? So I was very nervous and he cried a lot. And and I was trying to breastfeed and he just cried and cried. And at the time, what I didn't realize is I started slipping into postnatal depression. I was lonely. They don't have health visitors over there. Nobody checks up on you. You've got to go out and find people. I lived in an affluent village that didn't have, mums and tots, which is what I got used to when I came back to England and everything, completely on my own. And it's just weird. I kept just giving him to Richard. It's like I would care for him. I knew that I loved him, but I just didn't want to hold him. I didn't want to. So he ended up going onto the bottle because my relationship was becoming that every time I breastfed, it was just, I don't like being touched. I don't like it. And I changed my doctor at the time and he spotted and he said, he says, I don't even know you, but I know this is not you. There's something going on. And they discovered that I had thyroiditis, which had been caused by the pregnancy, which is, again, he was such a drain on my body that thyroiditis makes you have a hyperthyroid and then it flips into a hypothyroid, and it keeps fluctuating until eventually it decides which one you're going to be at.
So that's
And
your mood fluctuating, is it, as well?
yeah, and it makes you tired. It puts weight on, takes weight off. It just messes so much so that your glands are in your neck. And I was hypothyroid at first, and I just rang the doctor one day and went, "There's something wrong," because I can really feel it in my neck that there's something wrong. Instant blood test, and I had zero thyroid going through, so I had to go on tablets, and that's what I've ended up being. So 24 years later, I still have an underactive thyroid that I only got when I gave birth, really. So that was affecting it as well. So I started to feel better, but I felt such guilt that I pushed him away. And luckily, I had my husband, so he never wanted for anything. And I was, like I say, I still, when it was just me and him, still did what I had to do, and I still cuddled him and things like that. I just didn't get any enjoyment out of it at the time. And every time someone came to visit me, I found it harder and harder when they left to be a mum on my own without my mum and without my sister. And so at that point, I think he was about 8 months old, we decided to move back to the UK. And I came back, and I still live away from my family. I live about 3 hours away, but my mum and dad, as my kids have grown up, my mum and dad used to come at weekends and take the grandkids out. And they have a brilliant relationship with their granddad, and they wouldn't have had that if I'd stayed away. So I'm pleased that I came back. Then had a nice little house, had my little boy. I started to, really enjoy it. He was just after he was a year old, start talking and they start walking, and it reunited that, oh, this is what I wanted. I want to talk to him. I want to play with him. I want to do this. Um, but I decided that I didn't want an only child. Had wanted a family, so I was going to have another one, and that was Peter. And he was completely opposite. He was overdue by 2 weeks. He was not coming, and then when he came, he was blooming quick. Apologies. Do you want me to repeat that? Do you want to cut that
No,
bit
you're
out?
fine. You're fine.
I do apologize. Blooming quick. And that was because I had no pains with Luke. I didn't feel confident that I knew what a pain was going to be. So on this particular Thursday, I was watching Beauty and the Beast with Luke, and I thought, oh, I feel uncomfortable. And my mum and dad had come down because they were going to have Luke. So I said, I'm going to have a bath. So I went and had a bath. And then I lay on the bed and I thought, right, I'm going to turn my head away from the clock. And the next time I don't feel right, I'll have a look. And I started doing that to see what the times were. And then I rang Richard and said, I think I'm in labour, but I'm not going to tell mum and dad because they'll freak out. You need to come home now. And it was near the end of the day. But by the time, and I tried the TENS machine, and that was just awful. And by the time he walked in the front door, I walked into the study that was to the side and gripped on the back of the chair and went, we need to do something now. This is getting uncomfortable. And he said, well, what do you think? I said, well, let's make Luke's tea. I want to wait till Luke goes to bed so that he doesn't know that mum and dad have gone. But then the pain was just, eventually I just said, no, so, we're going. That's it, we're going. So from the first pain that I felt at 4 p.m., he was born at 8:30. So I had 4.5 hours, and he practically ran out of the womb. He was so fast. He was the same weight, but he was longer. And that is how their whole lives have been. Luke is I would say he's the outgoing. He did Amdram. He takes his time with things. He's chatty. He's really, but Peter just was born running and never stopped. So everything is fast. He would run with a football attached to his toes. When he started to learn the bike, my husband had a nervous breakdown, and his sentence was, I couldn't catch him when he was on his feet. There's no chance of catching him on wheels. So yeah, so I had both. Whenever I feel down about, like women do, about what I'm good at, can say that I say to my husband, I was good at giving birth because it was quick and I had no traumas or anything like that. But again, about 2 days after Peter was born, my husband rang the midwife and said, and I didn't know he was going to do this, but he did it in front of me. He rang the midwife and said, okay, she is presenting with exactly the same where she was with Luke. She doesn't see it, but I can see her dropping. And it got to the stage that I would get my pajamas on at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, because if I didn't, I was going to get in a car and do a runner. That's how it felt. I needed to run. but I didn't want to leave Luke because I'd now attached to Luke. So again, it was the same thing. I knew I had to function. I knew I had to look after him, but it was like, I don't want to be here. Sorry, I'm going to cough. I'm going to lean back. I don't want to be here. So again, this time though, because I was in England, they recognised, and I had a support network. People recognised, so I was taken to the doctors, and I had counselling, and I was put on antidepressants, and it made me enjoy. It helped me enjoy Peter more, so I was able to bond with him quicker. So yeah, so that takes me to the UK when Luke was 3 and Peter was born. The rest of the
Oh
journey,
my
I think, is
word.
this. It's the same as every other UK woman: school, karate club, scouts.
You
But
have
yeah.
had an intense journey. So that's your boys coming into the world.
Mhm.
And as you've mentioned, now they are adults, and you are at that point of potentially the empty nest syndrome. So, how does it feel now at this part of your mothering journey?
It's to be, I've been really honest, it's depressing, and I can remember just the other week I said to Richard, and crying, just saying, it's like I'm a mother without any children, because I don't know about girls, because obviously I only know boys, but they're very self-sufficient. My eldest one doesn't even live in the same country. He moved. He left home at 19 to go traveling, came back during COVID, and then has gone off to be with his partner in another country. So I speak to him every day, and thank goodness for FaceTime. But he's the hugger, so of my two children. So I don't get to hug him very much. So that makes me feel sad. And then the other one turns 21, in fact, 2 weeks from now, the day after my birthday. Um, and yeah, he works. He left school and he's got a job, and he still lives at home, but he doesn't need hugs, and he doesn't need that kind of help. He needs practical help. But so I feel like and this is why one of the things that helped me start my business, at the same time of my kids growing up, other things went on in my life. And I just felt like I lost a purpose. And I was, again, saying to explain to Richard, when it's the one thing that you wanted your whole life, I never thought that far ahead to what would I do when they weren't there anymore. Um, I mean, I'm hoping they'll give me grandkids eventually, but Peter is absolutely insistent that's not going to happen. And where my other son Luke is at the moment, that's not going to happen. He's going to have to move back to this country to be able to do that. But yeah, so I'm young, and well, I think I'm young. 48's not that old, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I enjoyed the time with me and Richard again, where I mean, we went on holiday in January. It was just the two of us, and it was like being 18 again. And I enjoyed that bit. But I do miss the from about the age, because I always see it as from about the age of 2, because obviously I was ill up until they were about that age. But from the age of 2 until about 11 or 12 was just perfect. It was just exactly what I'd wanted out of my life. And then, of course, they became teenagers, and it's all downhill from there. Sorry, people. It doesn't get it doesn't get any better.
My daughter, she's about to turn 11, although I
Good
do
luck.
feel like, yeah, I feel like I have a potential teenager in the house already. Um,
Yeah, I
so
think they should change.
yeah,
They should change the teenagers. I think that children grow up faster these years, like lately. Um, but year 11. So I went got a job, ended up getting. Sorry, I just got a message then. I went and got a job in education again, so that I could work with children. And my favorite year group of all time was year 6. Year 6 is fantastic because they are old enough to get your sarcasm, and they're old enough to get your banter, and they can mess about, but they're not cocky yet to answer you back seriously. Then they go into secondary school, and then you just sit living by the seat of your pants on what thing is going to come home that day. It's an interesting time because schools change your outlook as well. So when you're at primary school, and it was weird because obviously working in a primary school and also having a kid in a primary school, you are expected to do homework with them. You are expected to make them do their reading, make them do their homework, keep on top of all these things, make sure that letters are filled in. It's all on responsibility on you. If a letter's not filled in and sent to the secretary's office, it's your fault because you've not checked the bag for the letter. You go to secondary school, it's not your fault, it's his fault. It's like, well, but it's not going to get done because I've done it up until this point. They're not going to know to do this or to book it into their, oh, it was awful. And when it comes to parents' evening and they have to book the appointments, it's like, oh, for crying out loud, you got me an appointment at 10 to 4 and my next one's not till 6:30. What are you talking? Please try and get them together so I'm not sat there for 3 hours. It's just, and yet it's all on the kids then. So that's your first stage of you're not allowed to be involved. Step back. I mean, it's partly maybe it's schools about us learning to let go. I still haven't learned to let go, I'll hasten to add. But yeah, it's hard because you can't help them as much as you could. If they had problems with friends or bullying when they were in primary school, which heaven hope that they didn't, you were able to go in and say, my son is being bullied. Can we have some things put in place? And your kid accepted that. Mum's come to the rescue. Mum is lovely. You go to secondary school and they start getting bullied or things taken off them. You go to school, mum, and you complain, and I'll never talk to you again. And you have to leave them to it. And so then you feel completely helpless. And that helplessness gets bigger and bigger as they grow older, which obviously that's what you want. You want them to be independent. You want them to be able to go on with their lives. But at the same time, it's a little piece of you that's not needed anymore. So, yeah. So I'm quite, Peter turning 21. I know 21 is not an important number. Well, he says it. 21 is not an important number anymore. It's not the 60s mother. But I miss it. I really do miss it. Luckily, Richard's got a brother that's 10 years younger under him, and they've got kids. So we've just had the nephews visiting 10 and 5. Absolutely love it. We still have the toys in the loft. They come and say, more toys, Uncle Richard. They say that they don't want to go home. They say they want to stay. And I just love the short term bedlam. I wouldn't like it forever, but the short term bedlam. So I get it out of them, but now they're growing up. So I'm then I'll have to have somebody else's grandchildren.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice before you became a mum, what advice would you give yourself?
Um, it's more warning. I would warn myself that just because it says you've grown up with society saying it's going to be a certain way and TV going to be saying it's a certain way, it is not going to be what you expect. Even if it's even better than you expected and everything goes great, or it's harder than you expected. It's just don't have any expectations. People will tell you all the ways that they gave birth or the way that their children have been brought up. Just don't count that that's going to be your journey. Your journey is going to be completely bespoke to you. And therefore, release the guilt. You are going to feel guilty. It's a running thing. As a mom, you feel guilty because you're not the same as what other people are, because you've not done something right. But who says it's right? So I would say let go of that, because I did. I felt, obviously, because of the way that I was feeling, I felt guilty that I was rejecting, and I didn't want to do that. And then it made what worse. So my advice would be just don't have expectations and go with the flow when it arrives.
Oh, I like that. And in and amongst, because you're right, you do get given lots of advice. In and amongst that advice, you must have had one nugget where you thought, that is good advice.
I have one advice. I always pass it on to other people, and I always give the person credit. It was when I was in America, and my husband's boss's wife took me out, and she had a little boy, and she said to me, just remember that you're Erin. As you start this journey, you are going to become mum, wife, sister, and you'll start describing yourself, which is how I described myself at the beginning. And she just said, just don't forget there's Erin in there, and Erin will come out and needs to be nurtured and looked after, because without Erin, you don't have the rest. So just don't forget Erin. So I've always remembered that, and I've told that to my sister-in-laws and to any young friends. I've just always said, don't forget who you are before this, because this is going to change your life now. You're going to be mum forever, but you were Erin before.
That is amazing advice because you are so right. That's the one thing I think all mums have in common, and that's the loss of identity because being mum is all consuming. It's just
Mhm.
like the thing that we think about from the, well, I was going to say from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, but actually, we're probably even thinking about it when we're dreaming.
Yep.
So it is about keeping that bit of you and looking after you because exactly like she said, if you don't look after yourself and if you are not fighting fit, then you can't be anything to anybody else.
Nope. It's that whole saying, isn't it? Make sure that your glass is full before you start filling up other people's. But I
Mm.
find it weird. It's like my husband has been a real hands-on dad. Obviously, he had to step in when I had postnatal depression. When I became ill, when Peter was in year 9, when I became ill, he took over everything: dinners, sandwiches. Trying to remember what group that they had, failed at that, but he tried. Um, but they don't take on that identity of dad. You know, we see mum as this massive thing that we are mum. We will describe, we don't say, even though I did, I don't think in my head of Erin. I think I'm a mum than Erin and kind of thing. Mum comes first. And even though dads are there and they're caring and they're just as full on as their mums, I don't think they're seen as dad. They're still seen as this man, this person. So I don't under that. It's just weird how that happens, even if you are a quite a modern family and you've got stay at home dad, I still don't think that people perceive the dad to the same level as the word mum.
That is a really interesting point because I think you're right. And as you were saying that, I was thinking it's got to go back to, when we were living in caves and the men had a very clear role and women had a very clear role. The women all about nurturing and making sure everybody's okay. Man, go out and hunt. And maybe, it does go back to DNA and back then where it doesn't matter what the man has to do. He very much is the man. Whereas
Mm.
women, it's all about the community and giving. So that is a really good point.
I'll give you an example. Probably don't want to share this, but I will. Um, the fact that my husband could put Luke down or Peter down into the crib and go to the toilet on his own. How he could switch off that he had priorities. The babies were fine. He was going to the bathroom on his own. I don't think I peed in the bathroom on my own until they were disgusted with it and didn't come walking in when, I never had any house full of men. They can walk around whatever way they like, but I can't, or, how he did that. Or he would book a dentist appointment and just go to the dentist on his own. Whereas I had to think about the dentist appointment and also include the two kids so that they might as well get their teeth done at the same time. Men are able to, I don't know, compartmentalize that, okay, I need to do this. Kids are fine. I need to do this for my own health. I'm going to get this. And he was very focused like that. Whereas I constantly had to think, well, can I fit this in? And where does this kid have to be? And what does that kid have to be? And will I get a night off? Can I arrange this? Oh, right. Walking the dogs. We're all going together. It is weird how it's, and I don't, like I say, me and Richard are equals and I'm quite a feminist and he does just equal amount, well, in fact, to be fair, he does more than me around the house because I blame the disability, but also I hate being a housewife kind of thing, and I'm not very good at certain things, so he does all them. But yet still, you still think about the mum being the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so true. So we are coming to the end of our discussion together, which has
Oh,
been amazing.
I do talk a
Oh,
lot, sorry.
it's all about you. It's not about me. This is why we're here. I do have two more questions for you, though. So the first one is, what three things would you like everyone to take away from our conversation?
um Firstly, I would like to say to those that are struggling after giving birth that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is nothing wrong with going to get help because it helped me bond much better with my second kid because I had the help. Um, and it's not that you're a failure because you will feel like that. Just the minute you don't feel great and it's not going away, go get help. So anybody that has postnatal depression or is struggling, there's nothing wrong. Just go talk to somebody. The second one is, I'm going to break the myth. I was talking about this to my friend. Nobody tells you I think it's a secret group. We're like the Freemasons. Before getting pregnant, nobody tells you how hard pregnancy is. It's all lovely. When you're pregnant, it's too late. Nobody's going to tell you how hard actually labor is. So they tell you all the nice stories. Nobody tells you when the babies, how actually pain in the bum they are when they can walk and stick things in their mouths. And then nobody tells you that when they go to school, you're going to be ill for the next 6 years because of all the germs the kid's going to come back with. Then nobody talks about teenagers. They complain a bit about teenagers, but there's no mums and teenager groups. There's no, where do we go to? We just try and survive that. And finally, nobody tells you how hard it is to say goodbye and let them leave home. It's what you've worked to for this whole time, but you don't want them to go and you still want them to look at you like they did when they were 5. So I think everybody talks about the good bits at the beginning, but nobody educates or tells people about the blooming hard bits at the end. But I still wouldn't change any of it, So even now, when my kids are really, really annoying me and I'm really stressed and, people say, oh, do you wish you didn't have kids? It's like, well, sometimes I wish I hadn't gone through the process, but I would never, ever not be without Luke and Peter. So I did the right thing. So I fulfilled my successful journey. So yeah, just know that having children, so this is the second point, I think, that having children is just not about pregnancy. Look in the long term about your life and be prepared for when it gets harder later on. I mean, you can only be so prepared because your child is an individual, but just know there are going to be highs and lows, and that's okay. And the third thing is, I don't know, enjoy it. Take time. I have big regrets in the fact that when my kids were little, Richard would go walking with them and I took that time to go do the food shopping. Or I would look after Erin and I'd go to my friends. And I wouldn't go walking because it wasn't my thing and I didn't overly like it. I then became disabled and I have foot drop and I wear a foot brace now. And I would do anything to go back and go on those walks. So the washing will be done. The dishes will be done. But enjoy it because I cannot believe how quick 24 years have gone. And I'd do anything to go back in time and do it again. Well, up until age 12. I wouldn't want to do the teenage years again, I'm afraid. That's what made me go slightly grey. But yeah, I would love to do it all over again.
Oh. So we have come to the end of our time together. However, before we leave, people will have been listening to this conversation and thinking, Erin, she's amazing. I must connect with her. Make it easy for them. How can people connect with you?
Well, on social media now, I go by my business name. So my business name is Busy Bee Bolly, and that's BIZZYBEEBOLLY. And that's because, like I say, I'm a virtual assistant. So I'm on the social media all the time, and I talk about obviously helping my freelancers, but I also tell my journey about, becoming disabled during COVID and having to reinvent my whole career and stuff. So I am a person of that, I've had hard times, but, you just got to keep going. Life can be grey, so you got to make it colourful.
And that is a lovely way to end this conversation. So thank you, Erin, for talking to us today. Oh, I'm glad you loved it. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of What the Mum. If you enjoyed it, I've just got a little favour to ask you. Go ahead and tell all your mum friends so that more mums can share their stories of motherhood. And also, don't forget to subscribe and come and connect with me. Take care, everyone, and see you at the next episode.